warrior, he was a fighter, he was born in the 16th century. In a way, this is actually really sad. Hello and welcome to another one of my videos. I am Alex and I am the Wandering Englishman. In today's video, you find me on the road between Uman in Ukraine, heading towards Kropyvnytskyi in the east, to the east of Uman. A journey that should have taken 2 hours ends up taking 4.5 hours. Join me as I discover Kropyvnytskyi. How's it going? So 4 hours later, I find myself in Kropyvnytskyi, this Kropyvnytskyi station. Bus station. Seems like but like a lot of bus stations on completely the outskirts, in the middle of nowhere. I got to get myself to the center. Google's telling me to head this way, and I'm going to get on another bus because this is the way I like to do it. And let's see where we go. This bus station is really on the edge. The law of sod. I think we pretty much went around the entire city just to get here. I could have hopped off probably just at the start of the city and would have probably made it to the centre rather than waiting like this. But let's see how we do. No taxis to speak of. Let's find a bus and join me on this adventure. Sounding really nice. 21. No? Yeah, that's all right. Well, hopefully as easy as that. Just got on one of these little buses just to see if it takes us directly there. I think if Google is correct, this bus takes us there. So what I love about the travelling on the buses in Ukraine, Google is pretty much on point when it comes to buses in Ukraine. To get from Kiev to Uman, I got a BlaBla car. From Uman to here, it took about 4 hours. A journey probably should have taken 2.5 hours, 3 hours, but the roads are being resurfaced. Journey for this bus is 7 hryvnia. Well, as easy as that. Number 21. In Central America, I used to get chicken buses. For a year I was traveling around Central America. It was old school buses, yellow buses, and they were called chicken buses because effectively people would bring their chickens on the buses. Here, we may as well call them cat buses or pussycat buses. People bring their cats on board. Quite amusing, really. There's still a bit of a problem with drink driving in Ukraine. Some old men over there have been pulled over, and the old man's trying to exhibit that he's not drunk by going, I'm not drunk, I'm not drunk. Well, I've just checked in. Hopefully you saw my video on my apartment. If you haven't, click the icon. Very basic apartment, but plenty of space, perfect for £11. On this quiet street, I'm hoping the baseball players won't be making too much noise, but we shall see. So let's go and have a look at the streets of this town. And I think we find 3-4 blocks from where I'm staying, the Central Square. Central Square has these interesting steps leading up to it. We're gonna have a look at this. noticed a common theme in a lot of places in Ukraine. They remember the people that died in Maydanu. It's still incredibly sad how all of these people died. At the same time, there's people dying all over the place right now on the Eastern Front. And people from this town and other towns across Ukraine have probably been visiting, well, not visiting, going to war. And mothers and fathers have been losing their sons. Some mothers and fathers who live in the east have been dying themselves. It has devastated much of eastern Ukraine. But this is thankfully not too far east, so it hasn't been affected by the war just yet. But who knows, people who may have died serving the war from this town. I think this street is effectively the main street. It goes all the way from the north up towards the bus station where I got the bus, all the way south. And we're going to follow this street just to see what we see. Wow, this is an impressive building. Has to be said, I wasn't expecting impressive buildings in such a peripheral city. The population of this town is about 120,000 people, barely mentioned by anyone. This young man here, I did a little bit of reading up on him before I got here. This is Alexander Pushkin, and he was someone that effectively brought many of these civic buildings to the area. And the chair, I think, symbolizes him transferring power to the next people. But he's highly regarded in this city, and hence a fairly modern new statue devoted to him. They don't do things in half measures over here. A double hot dog and a sort of a ciabatta type bread. I probably got this all over my lips. 42 hryvnias, so it's just over £1 for a very, very substantial halfway meal. Very good. The town square notice board. This is probably where a lot of people sort of exchange details on if they want an apartment or just to say something. Probably less used today with the advent of the internet, but still used. I was wondering where all this mess was coming from, but it's coming from the trees. Cotton from the trees. Look at that. Amazing, really. Let's see how prices compare here. We've got 25 hryvnias for a kilo of strawberries, 220 for some cherries, 45 hryvnias for 1 kilogram of mushrooms, 35 hryvnia, which is 38 to the pound, so almost a pound, for 1 kilogram of potatoes. These strawberries are 55 hryvnias for the kilogram. And here we got 27 for the pickles. Maybe I've missed market day. Not much seems to be going on. I made the very wise decision to come back to this market later because right now is not the busiest time to be in this market. While I've got your attention, as you're still here watching this video, if you haven't already done so, click that subscribe button. That really helps me out and it's greatly appreciated because for every 1 subscriber I get, that tells YouTube to possibly show my videos to another person, which helps my channel grow. You are all greatly appreciated. I have just remembered it is a Sunday, so that's probably the reason a lot of this is closed. Maybe tomorrow this will all be back in action. I'm going to be here tomorrow, so I'm going to see if I can check this out tomorrow. This monument here It commemorates those that died because of the Chernobyl incident. Obviously with 1986 painted on the side of it, the Chernobyl disaster happened, and this sort of remembers those brave people that went into the reactor in the first weeks, first days, first weeks, first months, and lost their lives because of the radiation. This is also remembering the families that probably lost their lives, not probably, did lose their lives. And it's quite, I don't know, it's quite a spooky monument, but at the same time quite fitting for those people. What's really strange, when I told people I'm touring around Ukraine, everyone asks, are you going to go to Chernobyl? I'll be honest, I don't really want to, because every vlogger has been to Chernobyl and all they ever seem to do is they go to the Ferris wheel, they go to the park, and then they go to a few rusty buildings, and that's it. I value my testicles. I prefer not to have radiation pouring through them. I know they say it's no different from taking a long-haul flight, but no one really knows the long-term risk of visiting Chernobyl. So maybe after I've had children, maybe then I'll go. And right next to the Chernobyl Monument, we have the Inhul River. I'm probably mispronouncing that again. But this river is apparently 384 kilometers long. It basically heads south towards the Black Sea, where it sort of empties. And it is Ukraine's, I think, 14th biggest river. How do I know that? I just looked it up. So no brains there. Just looking up the information like you can do when you walk around and you notice everyone's worshipping the devil here as well. Satan! 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 I'm loving the Soviet architecture as we walk along the river here, the Inhul River. Random bits of graffiti. Pigeons, so we always feel at home because pigeons are everywhere. People going about their daily business. As is often the theme in these bridges all over the world, hundreds of locks showing someone loves Anna. There's going to be a lot of Annas on this bridge, I'm sure. Annas and Olgas and you name it. They've all been loved, and to declare that love, the locks have been left on these bridges. Sometimes when there's too many locks on bridges, the authorities often come and cut them off. Amazing business. Whoever started this, I'm sure, was a person that made padlocks, because it's a wonderful business.
Handmade in Italy, hand stolen in Stepney. It's as long as my arm. I wish it was as long as something else.
Because this is now done all over the world. Anywhere I go in the world, padlocks on bridges or padlocks on fences. It's quite a beautiful monument, this. Normally you have monuments where the soldier's holding a gun or charging into battle. But this monument, the four soldiers are holding a wreath, effectively to commemorate the fallen. And it seems to have the fallen between 1979 and 1989, so a 10-year period. Possibly people involved in Afghanistan, that was happening in that period of time. But a really strong, powerful monument. I like that. Still heading south down this busy road, which we've been following pretty much since we got from the square. The cathedral to my left, I'll say that again, the cathedral to my left was built in 1757. And hopefully I can get to go in there on the way back, but I'm seeing how far I can go. Actually, you know what? It's getting a little bit dark. I'm going to go in there now. And as you come through the gates, suddenly it gets much quieter off that very busy road. And hopefully we'll be able to go inside. Let's have a look. This magnificent cathedral was founded in 1757 by Greek immigrants in honor of Vladimir, icon of Mother of God. The cathedral is built in the style of classicism. I'm not an expert in architecture, but I have to say, walking in here, I felt an inner peace just walking in and taking it all in. I'm not a religious person. I would define myself as agnostic. However, every time I enter a church, I always try to light a candle if there's one available. For me, it gives me a time to reflect on my day, and it gives me a time to reflect on what has been. And I highly recommend everyone should do the same thing. Another beautiful Orthodox church. Probably you didn't notice, but always take off the hat when you walk into an Orthodox church. Interesting thing is, at the synagogue in Uman, hat must be worn, or a skull cap or something, but here, take off the hat. Which I did, by the way, I did. In normal times, I think flags are sort of hung from this monument. These are flagpoles, possibly. It's quite a patriotic monument, very Ukrainian. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave this road for the day. Up here, up in that direction, is the Fort of St. Elizabeth. It's one of the reasons I came to this town, but I'm going to save it until the early morning, and I'm going to head up that way in the early morning. I want to do some research on it before I head up there. It wouldn't be doing it right if I didn't digest a little bit more history. As I walk back down the hill and I walk away from the very patriotic monument back there, and I walk past whatever this is, I'm going to really go and swat up on what the Fort of St. Elizabeth is really about. So stick around for you. In the meantime, I'm going to go have a pint. By the looks of it, this was probably a Soviet monument. Maybe Lenin was here, maybe Stalin was here, but it's obviously been pulled down and no more. I hope it's in a museum. I think it's probably an unfair thing to come down here on a Sunday, because you can go to any city on a Sunday, and depending on, it could be a flip of a coin, you could find a place that's really busy, or you could find a place that's really empty. Down by the riverfront on a Sunday, it's certainly very quiet. Maybe on a Friday or Saturday, this place is teeming, but maybe it's always like this. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me if this gets super busy. Bohdan Khmelnytskyi, probably saying that one wrong as well, but this man was pretty much the defining Cossack. He led his people to victory of this entire area, which is now Ukraine, and he's much celebrated. He was a warrior, he was a fighter, he was born in the 16th century. And you might remember from my video on Kiev, where there's a statue of a man sort of rearing up on a horse. I know that narrows it down. I think it's Sophia Square, and there's a statue of him riding a horse, but you'll see pictures of this man everywhere. He's much celebrated in Ukrainian culture. He was feared back in the day because he was just a bit of a warrior. He was a conqueror, he was a titan. There's no other ways to put it. He was a warrior. I think this sort of depicts just how hardened he was. I think this is him in the middle, just going, come on if you want to have a go. What a warrior. Defined a nation, this man. Kind of a shame, he's in a sort of bleak square. Not much going on, he's in the middle of a roundabout. You've got a doner kebab thing going over there, some economy class thing over there. It really doesn't do him justice. I mean, this square really needs a revamp if you ask me. I like the fact that he's looking He's looking that way towards the east. But other than looking towards the east, I don't think it's justified. I think he needs a finer square. But it is a wonderful monument. So what I've got here is I've gone for the one that's number 51, and let's hope it tastes. They sold by the litre. 51 is about £1.40 or so. £1.30 for a litre of beer. Fantastic. Like, sometimes I admire those that speak the language really well. It wasn't getting across. I was asking if I could film. I was doing the international symbol for filming. It's not bad, a dark beer for 51, a litre of it, pretty good. So look, there's loads of places like this, and I just think they're fantastic. Just go in there, buy a bottle of beer, sometimes it's 50% off. Buy your dried fish, buy your dried nuts. Might try that one tomorrow.
The next morning.
Morning. So I'm here with my croissant, and I'm ready to start the day. It's another beautiful day, although the forecast says rain later. And if you're interested in the croissant index, croissant with filling will cost you 32 hryvnia. Or if you want a croissant from the shop, it's going to cost you 18 hryvnia. If you watch a lot of my other videos, I will tell you all the prices of croissants. Fascinating, I know. All right, so we're going to head through to the market, which was empty yesterday, but we're going to see if it's going to be busy today. And then we're going to head on to the Fort Elizabeth, see what beholds us there. I'm always humbled when I walk through squares like this, which you'll find in most of the Soviet countries, from Moldova, Belarus, Ukraine, and into Russia as well. And you'll find little old ladies and little old men selling plants and knickknacks. If there's ever a moment where you think, I need to buy some flowers or something, try to buy off these little old ladies, or young ladies in some cases, or young men. Because today is a sunny day, but I can tell you now, most of these people will be there when it's a snowy day as well. So please, if you are traveling through these countries, be polite to them, but also make a purchase occasionally. Similar to Greece, really, in the fact that the old people had their pensions completely decimated. So a lot of the old people, and to be honest, a lot of middle-aged women and younger people will sell flowers by the corners all day long. I don't know how much money some of them can make. Some of them make a reasonable amount of money depending on how good their business is, but people with 1 or 2 pots, they're not making much money. Yeah, it's predicted the market's a lot busier today. Amazing smells of garlic and vegetables, really nice. So we enter the fortress of St. Elizabeth, although strictly speaking, there is actually no fortress here, from my understanding. But it is worth, I believe, seeing nonetheless, and it is a war monument remembering those that lost their lives between 1941 and 1945. And we have the Ukrainian patriotism here. I'm sure that's going to be a beautiful bed of flowers soon. It's obviously just been recently installed, but this is what we've come to see. As we enter this memorial where people are remembered who lost their lives between 1941 and 1945, well, actually it won't just be people who've lost their lives between 1941 and 1945, it will be people who fought in that great war. And so many died, millions died, Europe's finest died, but it will be people that have died after also. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to see graves from the 1950s, 60s, 70s onwards, because they fought in that battle. Not battle, they fought in that war. But let's have a look. Yeah, straight away. 1980, 2009, these brave men are remembered. 1954, 1944, 2006. I think probably wise just to sort of reflect on just all of these brave souls that gave their lives fighting. Yes, they may have been on a different side to maybe you, but they died fighting for their families, they died fighting for their country, they died fighting for freedom, for what they believed was freedom. And it's the same could be said for both sides. Good men on both sides died fighting each other. I hope there will be no brother wars ever again. Europe should never be at war in the way that we were at war in the past. We should ask ourselves the question, what caused these wars, who financed these wars, and who gained from these wars, and let it never happen again.
Over its history, Kropyvnytskyi has changed its name many times. The settlement was originally known as Kafedralʹnyy, after the Empress Elizabeth of Russia. From 1752 to 1924, it was simply Elisavet. The strange thing is many of these brave men who lay here and are remembered probably were born under different names to the city. In 1924, it became Zhanovetskyi in honor of the Bolshevik revolutionary who was born here. Following the assassination of the first secretary of the Leningrad City Committee of the All-Union Communist Party, the Bolsheviks, Sergei Kirov, in 1934, the town was renamed to Kirovo in Kirov's honor on the 7th of December 1934. With the formation of the Kirovohrad Oblast region on the 10th of January 1939 to distinguish from the Kirovohrad Oblast in central Russia, Kirovograd was named to Kirovograd, a name it maintained until 2016. Now I apologize, I might have brutalized many of the names. Please forgive me. Then in 2016, due to the mandated decommunisation, the name of the city then changed to Kropyvnytskyi in honor of the writer, actor and playwright Marko Kropyvnytskyi, who lived from 1814 to 1910, who was born near where we are now.
There's a peaceful stillness about this place. There is a reasonably busy road, maybe 100 meters over there. It is their version of Arlington Cemetery and just outside Washington, D.C. It's just such a waste. It is such a waste, and what is more wasteful is this is happening again. Russian brothers are fighting Ukrainian brothers on the eastern front of Ukraine. Who knows if Europe will be pulled into another war as financiers or banksters look to profit from war. The war machine is cranking up, and it's only a matter of time before we're led with propaganda to believe that war is the only answer.
Kropyvnytskyi was occupied by Nazi Germany from the 5th of August 1941 to eventually be given back to Soviet forces on the 8th of January 1944. Many lost their lives.
And just behind me here is, I think, what represents maybe a mother of one of the soldiers or a mother of the Soviet Union. And she's reflecting on the fallen. The eternal flame, which is usually lit in the evenings or when there's a ceremony. And then the soldiers either side saluting the fallen.
And while that remembers those that fell under the Soviet Union, we have this recent addition to this place, and it's those that have fallen under the Ukrainian flag. And it's just a shame because it's happening this year. For various reasons, the war in the Donbass has been going on since March 2014. In that time, Ukraine has suffered almost 5,000 casualties. The pro-Russian side has suffered almost 6,000 casualties. The Ukrainians have had over 10,000 wounded. The Russian side have had over 13,000 wounded. The war has claimed the lives of almost 4,000 civilians. And this madness, where brothers fight brothers, has displaced almost 1.5 million Ukrainians. And almost 1 million of those have left the country. And this man being the most recent, I mean, this guy is 16 years younger than myself, and he died a year ago. I believe because many men have died in the war on the Eastern Front. I believe these men are probably from the Kropyvnytskyi region. It's so sad. Well, I've just walked another mile. I'm connecting all of the dots on the map to try and see every single monument that is in this great city. And you know what? This is a really fantastic city. What I wasn't able to record last night, I found a street just north of the main square, and it went from east to west, and it kind of goes downhill as you're going west, which is beautiful because the sun, as the sun sets, the sun sort of blazes in its sort of red golden glory down the street, and along the pathway of the street, all these restaurants and bars, and there's a lot of life. So where I thought the life might be, the Panorama Bar, no, it's at this street, and there's a lot of life even on a Sunday. Hopefully I can film that tonight, but sadly, as you can probably tell, over here we've got grey clouds, and the forecast isn't sunshine in the next few minutes. It's going to be rain for the rest of the day. And as I literally come up here, I'm now getting to this monument that celebrates the fallen from the Second World War again. But isn't it great that they actually, well, it's not just the Second World War, it's the First World War as well. Well, no, it's after that. The war from 18 to 21, and obviously the Second World War 41 to 45. It's such a shame that it's literally going to pelt it down with rain any moment now. All the little ladies or the babushkas are packing up their wares just because there's about to be a big thunderstorm. And over there is where I was hoping to go, with a park with a kind of an amusement park in it. Something similar to the parks that you remember from Minsk. And also Kharkiv had an amusement park just like that. Basically fairground rides. But I think I'm going to head back because it's going to get very wet very soon.
1 hour later.
It's just stopped raining, and I managed to get to the next monument on my tour, and this is the Monument to Defenders of Law and Order. It was erected in 1977, and now in 2021 there's a little bit of controversy behind it, because obviously it's a monument congratulating the people that worked for the KGB and to sort of put people in order. And over the terror and reign of the KGB, effectively send people off to places like the Gulag. So to some people, yeah, slightly controversial monument. 12,000 steps later, and about 11.5 kilometers round trip from the center to the monuments that you just witnessed, I am now back in the center just to sort of do a little bit of mopping up, just to see what else I can see. I know there's a few monuments up towards the north of the city, and I also know that there's a few interesting things to see. And so far, really like the center of the city. The outskirts, very sparse. There's a lot of like little retail type premises, confectionery shacks like that. There's no places to drink or eat on the outskirts of any significance unless you want to go to a supermarket. The center seems to be the place. If you want restaurants and bars, you've got to go to the center. And this is the incredibly busy street that I found last night. We head east that way, and then we head down to the west this way.
And the law of sod, I think because there had been sporadic showers all day long, so people were sheltering, the street is incredibly empty. The previous night there were people all over the street, there were diners, there were drinkers, and that was a Sunday evening. Late in the day this day, nobody. Oh well.
In a way, this is actually a really sad monument. It basically symbolizes the first tram that ever went through the city and the last tram that ever went through the city. They thought best to be rid of the tram. You'll find trams all over Ukraine and most of Eastern Europe, and they're actually amazing ways to get around. But here, we have a tram. Well, it's not even a real tram, but it symbolizes the fact that there used to be a tram here for 100 years. And this is the only way it can be remembered. And at the end of the east-to-west boulevard where the restaurants and bars are, we find ourselves a beautiful church in the background, a beautiful little park, and this monument here. My mistake, it's not a church, it's a place where ladies can have tea and crumpets. It's not a church at all. In a way, more magnificent than a church actually. This is actually the National Theatre, or the Kropyvnytskyi Theatre, that was built in 1867, and no theatre going on today. Doors are shut. Not that I'd understand much of it anyway, but certainly worthy of anyone's time if you speak the language. You've got time here. Check out the National Theatre. Kropyvnytskyi, being a very industrial city, at least on first impressions, doesn't have that many parks. Certainly if you compare it to Lviv or Kiev or Kharkiv. However, the parks it does have are very beautiful, this being one of them. This is just to the west of the city.
Up until 1991, Ukraine had some 5,500 Lenin monuments. With the decommunisation that occurred from the protests that started in Maydanu in 2014 to the legislation that was imposed in 2015, Ukraine has now lost all of these monuments. One such Lenin monument used to stand front of stage in this square. Now, while it's pleasing to see communism being beaten down, it is disappointing not to see these monuments preserved in museums. Now, if only the West could follow the example of Ukraine and rid communism from the streets.
I believe what we see here is an old Soviet outdoor theatre. You can imagine back in the day, this was a summer gathering of Soviet Shakespeare-type plays. I don't know.
Быть или не быть? Вот в чем вопрос.
It would have been amazing to see. As you can see from up there, if you can see the detail, you can see men dressed as Cossacks and the sort of old type of Cossack gear. They're dancing away, so I'd imagine you'd have people putting on plays and putting on musicals and dances in a way. It's got an amazing sound to this as well. As I get closer and closer, it probably means my voice projects to the people looking at me strangely as I hold a camera and glance at the various bits of graffiti. Thankfully there's no 666s here, thankfully. There's a little bit, Nothing too garish. And you know what's interesting? In Moldova, there's a thing about penises. Here, you don't see any penises. That's a good thing. Right next to the park is a military university. All day long you see military personnel coming and going. The city takes pride in its military. One of the reasons is because of the military academy here. This is where the people become officers and they climb the ranks by going to this establishment here. Over there is the place where you hear the Philharmonic Orchestra. You might hear some music productions. Not open today though, but I hear it. It's very impressive. And right next to it, a skate park with some skateboarders and BMXers. But what I'm after is apparently a brewery around the corner. I'm gonna go find it. I don't know if this is a brewery or just a pub that sells beer, but let's try and find it. I'm quite thirsty. And you really can't get away from the lost men of Ukraine. Another monument to the men that died in the Second World War. Maybe they worked here at the brewery. Maybe they were connected somehow. I'm not sure. Denied. Absolutely denied. Not open. Well, I didn't find beer, but I found a stadium. Maybe that's God's way of basically saying you need to get fit, stop drinking beer. Maybe. This magnificent statue is Taras Shevchenko. You will see references to Taras Shevchenko all over the old Soviet Union, and rightly so. He probably is the most celebrated writer, or one of the most celebrated writers in the old Soviet Union, probably after Dostoevsky. He's celebrated pretty much in every major city, town, across most of the Soviet Union. And what's interesting is he was born 2 years after Charles Dickens, one of England's greatest writers. And yet, you never see many statues of Charles Dickens around the United Kingdom. And yet, this great man, he stands in front of a library dedicated to children, so it's a children's library. And I guess it's probably to encourage the reading and writing and political thought, because not only was Taras Shevchenko a poet, a writer, he was also a social commentator. And he had a great influence on the people of the Soviet Union, and also just people that have taken the time to read his work. He's had an influence over time, and he still does. And what a great man. He died, I think it was in 1861. I could be wrong on that, 1861. But I know it was 9 years before Charles Dickens. So not only was Charles Dickens 2 years older than Taras Shevchenko, Charles Dickens outlived him by a further 9 years. But what a great man. And I think that pretty much ends my tour of all the monuments in this unique town, and what a fantastic town it is. I've really enjoyed walking in the heat, inappropriately dressed in my boots, just sort of taking it in. I really hope that it possibly encourages you to visit. I'm going to take in a little bit more of the nightlife later, and then I'll be off on another journey. So hopefully you can join me on that journey. Hopefully I'll see you then.